Hey guys, Edre here, and today I am going to be doing a review of the new Oliver Tree album, Ugly is Beautiful. Going into this album, I had mixed feelings, to say the least, on Oliver Tree's material. The song Hurt really was the one that struck me as being the strongest track that I think he had put out. But a lot of the other stuff that he was releasing, it didn't really do it for me. And I think the reason that is because I get that he was going for a more out of the ordinary, a bit strange aesthetic. That I get that this is all kind of also part of the character. But I just don't feel like it was executed the greatest it could have been. And that is why I just never really was gung-ho about his musical style. However, going into this album, this thing had been delayed like 100 times, it felt like. First because of COVID, later because of the George Floyd thing that was going on in the beginning of June. So it's understandable why. And I don't know if you see it, but there's a little bug in here that's going to be annoying me this whole review. But it was delayed many times, and to make up for it, there were singles being released from this album as far back as 2018. And unfortunately, what this did to me was it diminished the hype. And I know that this is sort of a weird thing. This isn't really a criticism, just more of a recommendation for artists going forward. This is a 14-song album, which means that he released around 6 songs, which is around 40% of the album, prior to its release. So the only reason I have issue with that is because going back as far as 2018, when people start first releasing singles, I usually start building up hype for the album. And if you wait nearly 2 years to release the album that you've been promoting pretty much for the past 2 years, my hype and my excitement for the album is going to go down and down and down. Now, I know there's a lot of hardcore Oliver Tree fans who will disagree with me, who do think that they're still hyped up. I get that. But for average listeners, I don't think that's necessarily the best business model. But either way, the album does follow through with his sort of alt-rock, sort of emo, sometimes satirical and more hip-hop influenced music. And just like some of those other singles I was talking about, unfortunately, not all the tracks in here are as well executed as Hurt. The opener, Me, Myself, and I, just, yeah, sure, it's an upbeat, modern, kind of a little bit of pop rock emo to it, but it just, once again, it doesn't have much of an impact on me. And then that's followed by 1993, which, yes, that does represent him bringing more of the hip-hop into the mix with some pretty good beats. I won't, deny that. I think the actual production throughout this album is pretty solid. But the vocals, they just don't fit. I feel like he really goes really hard on this character and this style that it doesn't always match each and every song he does. Songs like Cash Machine, though, I think it does work a little better because it does have a bit more acoustic vibes to it. It does kind of follow through with some of the more emo-type sounds. And then there's the single Let Me Down, which I did a review of on this channel, and my thoughts really haven't changed on it too much. I remember very clearly me saying that I didn't mind the track other than, once again, the vocals. The good instrumental was pretty solid. But my two main complaints are the fact that the vocals really don't seem to portray any major emotion here. And this also leads into probably my biggest complaint about this album. So many of these songs are so short, Let Me Down included, that they end before they get anywhere or have any long-lasting impact. And the reason I get so annoyed about that is a song like Miracle Man has the potential to be a genuinely solid track. However, it ends before it even has any major impact. Let Me Down does the same. Most of these songs end not that long after the 2-minute mark. And while yes, that works for some artists, I feel like these songs keep on building up, and then they end. And I find that very disappointing. My second major complaint kind of goes along with the vocals, and that is the rapping. On songs like Bury Me Alive and Joke's on You, to put it simply, the rapping is just simply not that good. And in fact, it kills these tracks for me. I know it feels, I don't like criticizing albums based off the technique of the artist all the time, because I do feel like that is a bit of a lowball, especially considering this is technically his first album under the Oliver Tree name. But this sort of emo rapping, and I know I say emo rap, but I'm not referring to the Lil Peep, Juice WRLD emo rap. No, I'm talking about rapping, like actually trying to rap with an emo tone to your voice. The way he does it, it does not work, and it does not do those songs any compliments. Bury Me Alive and Joke's on You would have been solid tracks. I like the beats, but I cannot get myself to enjoy those vocals. And when he's not rapping, though, I'm sure you've already caught on, he does really use a lot of emo inflections in his voice. It gives me a lot of front bottoms vibes in a lot of spots, especially the songs that do have more acoustic guitar throughout it. But I would argue the songs that really do shine the brightest when it comes down to his emo vocals is Alien Boy and Introspective. Introspective. It does work for those songs a little bit, but it's just, part of it just feels overdone. And I bring this up a lot whenever I cover a band that seems to have some emo vibes to them. I covered that Juice WRLD album. He definitely has that influence. I covered the 5 Seconds of Summer, All Time Low albums as well. All of them kind of do have some sort of influence there. But, like Juice WRLD, for example, sure, he does have that emo tone a lot of the times. Even lyrically, he talks a lot about depression and all that. But he has a uniqueness to it. And yes, you could argue Oliver Tree is unique, but it just sounds like he's really overdoing it to play up this whole weird sort of character. And while I appreciate his efforts here, it doesn't translate the best when it comes down to actual music. Sure, it may be good for his character, but for the actual music itself, it ends up hurting it. Now listen. So far, this does seem like it's a pretty negative review. Is there some saving graces here? Yes, I mentioned it earlier. The song Hurt, I think, is the best song on this album. Yes, it does show him going really heavily into the emo vocals, and yes, it does bring in some of that hip-hop beat, but it has a good overall feel to it. It has a good grungy tone to it. It has a pretty good melody, which is something that a lot of these songs lack. A lot of them have pretty forgettable melodies. Hurt has a very memorable melody. The song Jerk is another song that I wouldn't say necessarily is like excellent, but it definitely does show a bit more emotion to a bit more of a personal side, which I appreciate. And again, does have a very nice lead that is played throughout it, and does have an overall good feel to it. So there are good songs on here, and I wouldn't say that any of the, there isn't too many songs in here that are genuinely just unlistenable. Other than maybe the ones, the rapping ones may not be the most listenable, but unfortunately, I was not nearly as satisfied as I was hoping. I knew that I probably wasn't going to love this album, going off of the fact that there were 6 singles released, and I only really thoroughly enjoyed one of them. But unfortunately, yeah, the album really, it doesn't really do much for me. However, I will give him credit because he did manage to have a pretty solid vibe throughout it. It does definitely follow through with his weird character, which he's been going heavy on for a while. So I cannot take that away from him. That being said, this was kind of a harder one for me to rank because I wanted to be as objective as possible because, you know, he's a weird dude. What can I say? But unfortunately, I have settled on giving this album a solid 5 out of 10. Now, yes, that does seem low, especially compared to some of my other recent reviews, but a 5 out of 10 is an average review. Anything above a 5 is good, anything below a 5 is bad, which means that I do believe that this Ugly is Beautiful album is average. I don't hate it, and yes, this did seem like a negative review, and I get that, but I do think that he does play into his character well here, so I have to give him that. However, I just don't think it was executed nearly as great as I wanted. That is it for now. Oliver Tree, Ugly is Beautiful. 5 out of 10.